Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Cachay. I'm an HTMA and Mineral-Nutritional Balancing practitioner. I'm also the creator of HTMA Success, the HTMA and Mineral-Nutritional Balancing practitioner training program. And I'm here with my long-term friend and colleague, Cressida, who is from Hair Analysis UK. And I'm excited to do this video with you. It's been a while. And Cressida and I are going to be doing a short video today on some of the main questions that we get asked about HTMA. And so, Cressida, I think you were going to pull up a chart. And one of the first questions that we just wanted to chat about, because it's one that we hear a lot, is, can HTMA reveal adrenal fatigue or burnout?
Yes.
So, Cressida,
definitely.
how do you respond to that question?
Okay, so can you see the chart?
Yes, I can see
Okay,
the chart.
great. Well, actually, adrenal fatigue and burnout is one of the most common complaints that people have when they come to hair analysis to find out, why they have it and, what is out of balance. And so often, the most common pattern that we see is something like this, which is actually a retest, this chart, but it's a very good example of adrenal burnout. So we're starting off, I can show you just here, the first four macro minerals, we call them calcium, magnesium, sodium, and potassium. They're basically the electrolytes. And when they're out of balance, then a lot of the other minerals in the body will go out of balance. But they show so much, the first four minerals on the test. They show adrenal and thyroid function, in fact. So the calcium here is 410 when the actual ideal level is 40. So you can see that there's an issue there with the calcium. We call it a calcium shell because over 155, 160, it's very much coming out of the bones and going into the tissues. It's slowing the body down. And that is coupled with a very low potassium, which you can see here of 2. And normal is 10. So this actually shows a thyroid issue. And then if we look at the sodium level, that's at 11, which is called a burnout indicator. So 11 and under is burnout. Normal is 25, you can see up here, or ideal, I should say. There is a range here, this blue kind of strip across the graph. But yeah, so burnout is 11 and under, and then you've actually got 5 and under is called basic burnout. And actually, as this is a retest, this person is actually doing a lot better because it's their sodium has actually come up, but it's still under 11. It's still 11 and under. So very much in burnout. This is showing the adrenal capacity. It represents cortisol. So it's because the adrenals are very much involved with the sodium level. So, when you have better cortisol levels, your sodium goes up. So we can see that this person has adrenal fatigue, adrenal weakness, the potassium also obviously being very low. But as we move across to iron and copper, there are issues, if you're not metabolizing iron and copper, then you are going to have energy issues as well. And this person has got a very high copper level. They're actually dumping copper off. So that's a whole other area that we look at, is copper toxicity or biounavailability. This person has got copper biounavailability, so they're not utilizing it because their adrenals are weak, and also the iron can't be utilized as well. So the iron, the the copper was 4.5, so still high on the last test. Now it's 16.3. 2.5 here is the ideal level. So you can see that they're very much dumping copper, and they're not utilizing it. It's coming out into the tissues. And this can cause a lot of fatigue. It can cause issues with the mitochondria, lots of, let me just refer to my notes so I don't forget anything. Yeah, it can affect your neurotransmitters basically, and cause a lot of mental symptoms and emotional symptoms. So, and copper as well will suppress that potassium level. So that potassium level at 2 is being held down by that copper.
Right, which is sympathetic dominance. And it's interesting on this test, it's just so obvious where when we see this very high calcium and magnesium and the very low sodium and potassium, we know that this person is an extremely slow oxidizer. So when we talk about adrenal fatigue or burnout, that's usually the type of fatigue where, it's not relieved by a vacation or a few nights of good sleep. And so, there can be irritability, low motivation, oh my gosh, a number of symptoms. Everything is just kind of slowed down or sluggish in the body, which means that the person also is more prone to have metals and toxins sitting in the tissues, right? Because things are not balanced, that the oxidation rate is not balanced. And so, like you were saying, wow, those first 4 minerals, although they're important indicators along the whole row there on the top of the chart, those first 4 are just so important. And this person with the low phosphorus as well, so that's even a lower vitality kind of burnout indicator that we see that there's some digestive issues. How do you, this is a common question too. So, adrenal we see, and obviously the whole glandular system functions together as a whole system. But how does HTMA help identify thyroid issues? Because that's also tied into weight, gain or loss, cold hands and feet, brain fog, dry skin, mood swings. Certainly a lot of symptoms that we would even think of during menopause, right, as hormones are fluctuating. But what can we tell about thyroid issues from this HTMA?
Well, it's actually mainly the calcium, the very high calcium and the very low potassium, also the low iron. Often people with thyroid issues will have very low ferritin, but you can also, and also the zinc. There are many indicators actually. The main ones being calcium and potassium, but you've got this very high zinc here, which is a loss. Zinc is very important for thyroid function. So that is being pushed up. Usually the zinc being pushed up is because of metals. And if we go down here, we can see a lot of metals here are dumping. If this was a first test, it's the same thing. The metals are pushing up the zinc. And, so underneath this high zinc will be, in fact, a zinc deficiency. So we regard this as a loss. And when there's a deficiency of zinc, then metals do tend to accumulate, in particular copper, of course. And then it's a sort of like a compounding issue that's going to then keep suppressing the thyroid. And so, what we try to do with mineral balancing is actually start to bring in the minerals that are needed to activate the system, the thyroid and the adrenals, to start to bring up the energy within the body so that the metals will naturally detox. The body knows what to do, and the metals will start to leave. We do add in some detox procedures that are optional, but generally we rely on the body to, in its own wisdom, to start to push the metals out when it has sufficient minerals. So we can also see here that the selenium is actually very low, and that's needed for thyroid too. And in fact, you know, although we can't see it on necessarily on the test, we can see poor digestion from the low phosphorus, but the microbiome is actually really important as well for converting T4 to T3 in thyroid metabolism. So we would always look at that as well, increasing, you know, the good gut flora when someone presents with a test like this.
Interesting. And what about this? This is a really common question about detecting heavy metal toxicity. Because there's lots of nuance in that with an HTMA. So what do you normally say about that, about metal toxicity? Which again, I mean, we could just spend the next half hour listing all of the symptoms of heavy metal toxicity, but generally related to the HTMA.
Yeah, so I think I touched on before that, you know, when you've got low zinc levels, when you've got low energy in the body and showing a very slow oxidation rate that we've got here, the body will tend to pick up metals, and then the body will utilize these metals in place of the minerals because they're very similar in shape and size, and they can act as a replacement for various minerals. For example, cadmium can down here can replace zinc. You've got a relationship between aluminium and selenium, and so on. So we will see on a first test, we might possibly see high levels of these toxic metals down here. But we might as well see very, very low levels of toxic metals. And that doesn't mean that the person hasn't got them. It actually means under a certain level, and you know, there's a certain certain figures that we work to. So under a certain number, the metals are called poor eliminators if they are not up to a certain level where we know that they're actually detoxing on a regular basis, because we're all subject to the environment and the metals in the environment and toxins and chemicals and so on. So we expect metals to be of a certain level. But when they're very low, they're called poor eliminators, and we know that the body is storing them and not being able to detox them. So this person, their energy has obviously come up from the last test, and they're starting to release these toxic metals. So when the energy of the body is good, the body will be detoxing on a regular basis, as long as their detox pathways are open. So, you know, their liver's working well, their kidneys are working well, they sweat well, they're you know, eating well, they've got a good amount of minerals and then nutrients in their diet. But when you're particularly a slow oxidizer like this, you're not, especially on the first test, you're not really going to be detoxing very well. On the flip side of that, you've got fast oxidizers. So a fast oxidizer is someone who has a very high sodium level up here and a high potassium level, and the calcium and magnesium levels here are very low. Now, they often show more toxic metals on their first test because their metabolism is just a lot faster. But they're also mostly fast oxidizers. They have what we call a low sodium to potassium ratio. So the potassium is higher than the sodium level. And this is showing that they're actually weakening. The adrenals are starting to weaken, and they're going to come eventually. They will most likely get into a slow oxidation pattern. So often that fast oxidation pattern that we see on the first test is a stress pattern. So the adrenals are in an alarm state of stress. For example, it could be environmental, it could be toxic metals they're exposed to, or it could be stress. at work, relationships, and all that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't know. Hopefully that answers the question that there's, yeah, toxic metals play a huge part in the analysis of HTMAs.
Well, and I think that the two really important points that you touched on, because it comes up quite often, is when people do an HTMA, sometimes they have this misconception that they want their metals to be as low as possible. And we actually, as you were saying, right, everybody's exposed to a certain amount if you're living on the earth, no matter how careful you are. So if you're eliminating well, and if you've got a good balance with the preferred minerals and the body isn't using a lot of them, we should see a certain level, right? So actually, them being very low tends to mean that A, the body's using a lot, and B, it doesn't have the energy to push them out. And the other concept that you touched on is one that I'm super sort of on fire about, because it has to do with the heart of what this program is all about. And that is the concept of mimicry. You know how you were saying, okay, well, when zinc is deficient, the body can use cadmium because it's similar in chemical structure. And again, I think a lot of people have a misconception that a lot of the toxic metals are just kind of idly sitting in our tissues. And some of them are, for sure, if we don't have the energy to push them out. But a lot of them are actually being used. So as our environment's gotten more toxic and as our food supply has gotten less nutrient dense, more and more of that mimicry is happening. And so I use the analogy of, and I think this is actually originally from Dr. Wilson, but it's like if you are driving your car and you're in the desert or you're somewhere, you're more isolated and your fan belt goes, right? And so you go, what am I going to do? Well, you're wearing a belt on your jeans and you take it off and you put it around and you're like, wow, okay, this is okay. My car's still going. And it works, but maybe it works 10% or 20%. It's not 100%, right? And what this program is all about, it's about taking that car into the repair shop to get a brand new fan belt, right? That's supposed to be the part that is supposed to be there. And then all of a sudden you're like, wow, my car is functioning like it used to. This is amazing. And so the reason why this program works so well, even though we all wish it was faster, is that it changes the terrain of the body. And it's the only program that I know that does that at such a deep level, right? So using that fan belt example, if you've got toxic metals that are being used in different areas of the body where the preferred minerals should be, your body's not functioning as well as it could be. And we both hear from so many clients where they'll say, oh my goodness, all my blood tests were normal. My doctor was like, no, you're in great shape. And I feel terrible. Why do I feel terrible? And then they do an HTMA and they're like, oh, wow, this explains so much. Because this concept of mimicry, well, when metals are being substituted for preferred minerals, the body's just not going to be able to function well, right? The thyroid starts to go off,
Exactly.
adrenals and everything. So I
And I think,
love that. Yeah.
and I think I just wanted to point out as well, not to interrupt, but that the program, as you said, it is a slower program because we don't go after, one toxic metal with a chelator. So for example, the aluminium, we don't chase that down. The reason for that is we allow the body to create its own energy again with the program and the supplements that we recommend that increase the minerals and energy in the body so that it will naturally detox, because we don't want to chase a particular metal and then it get dumped off somewhere else in the body, because that often happens with chelation therapy. So I just wanted to make that clear that we do use binders, of course, but we don't use chelators that a lot of other therapies use, because we like to do it in a more natural way and also a slower way, so that people don't get huge detox reactions, because they can be quite severe. But also along with that, there's a lot of retracing to be done as well, and that's retracing of past emotions, illnesses, infections, and so on. And retracing means going back through past mineral patterns, that can only be done when you're supplying the body with the correct minerals, and following those first four minerals there, and creating a balance there. So the body will start to retrace. I don't know if you want to say a bit more about retracing. You're probably, better at talking about it than I am, Susan.
Yeah, I mean, I think we could go down a bit of a rabbit hole, but it's
Yeah,
basically going through previous patterns and bringing up old infections. We all have old infections and viruses and bacteria and metals stored. And as we go through that, like it's really interesting. Candace Pert in her book, Molecules of Emotions, talks about how our emotions are stored with toxic metals and with different patterns. And essentially what happens as the body is healing and we're going back and retracing is we're retracing a lot of that. And I've had a number of clients that they've gone through a really traumatic event, like a parent has died when they were at a young age, and they've gone through, even though they've done a lot of counseling on this program, when the body is physically healing and getting rid of toxic metals, they've said, wow, a lot of the emotion came up and it felt like it was a more complete healing than they ever got through counseling, right? Because the emotion
absolutely.
started to be released. And
Yeah.
with the concept of binders, and every practitioner is a little bit different, but although there are binders that are built into the program, making sure that your bile flow is really good, including lots of vegetables or soluble fiber foods in the diet. Those are kind of the best binders. I think that when people think of a binder, they think of separate supplements, and although they can help some people, I just wanted to mention that sometimes the value
Yeah.
is kind of overstated when it's kind of limited of what they do. And they also grab preferred minerals. So within the framework of the program, there's a lot built in that is to support the body with eliminating and binding metals on their way out.
Yeah.
It's interesting, again, fatigue is such a prominent symptom for a lot of people, and certainly our lifestyles where we're go, go, go and busy, 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 it doesn't really lend itself for relaxation and healing and rest. But what would you say if a person say, well, I'm just tired. My doctor has said that everything is fine. Can an HTMA help explain why a person is tired all the time?
Yeah, so on this particular test, again, we can look at this calcium level that's going to really slow a person down, and it's a compensation that the body is making, in fact, to slow a person down further, to stop them, to prevent them from burning themselves out even more. So having that calcium shell is actually quite protective, and by slowing you down, you're going to actually have to take more rest, and so that the adrenals can recover a bit. So the body knows what it's doing here, but that calcium shell is actually going to cause a little bit of numbness as well, a bit of unawareness, brain fog, poor memory, these sort of issues, as well as a lot of fatigue. And we can see with the very low iron as well, that's going to cause issues with energy, the very high copper as well, and the low potassium. So definitely, I mean, also we often find with this kind of pattern anxiety, because not only are the adrenals slow and tired, that can cause sugar issues, so poor sugar metabolism. So somebody could get very, very low blood sugar on occasions, and this can cause the adrenals to overreact and cause anxiety, but also that high copper affects emotions and the brain as well, and that will cause anxious fears, anxiety, panic attacks, this sort of thing. And then, of course, that is going to tire out the adrenals even more. So, you've got a vicious cycle going on. And so, where we help is we step in there and we start to bring that copper level down, bring that calcium down, bring that magnesium down as well. I didn't mention that before, but that's a loss. Usually the magnesium follows calcium. So if the calcium is going up, that magnesium will go up as well. And so we regard that as a loss. So this person is also deficient in magnesium, which is also needed for energy. But also both the calcium and magnesium and the zinc they're also very calming minerals. So when you've got a loss of them, or you've got showing a deficiency on the chart, then a person has very low buffers to stress. So they're going to feel stress more. They're not going to be able to relax so easily. They're going to encounter stress in their life, and they're not going to be able to deal with it as well as if you're minerally balanced.
Yeah, exactly. And that kind of leads into the next question that we often get asked about, can mineral nutritional balancing help with anxiety and mood issues? And, the answer is yes. And for a lot of the reasons that you just pointed out, that, and again, this points to making sure that you're working with a practitioner that is interpreting an HTMA chart the correct way. Because, someone might go, oh my gosh, my calcium and magnesium are so high, I must not need those. And Cressida, as you were saying, that actually is showing a loss or a deficiency. So people can have symptoms of an excess of calcium and magnesium and simultaneously a deficiency. And it's really the deficiency that's important. And so one of the questions I will sometimes get from clients is, well, why are you recommending calcium and magnesium when they're so high? And I have to explain, well, this is a loss, you're deficient, and you can see actually usually by the symptoms that the person is having symptoms because of the deficiency of those preferred minerals. And, calcium, magnesium, and zinc are three of the most common minerals that are used in the body at different enzyme sites. And they're ones that are frequently replaced by toxic metals when they're deficient or out of balance. And so we always want to make sure we're providing those particular preferred minerals, because just doing that actually helps balance the body's levels, meaning that this person having such high calcium and magnesium, if we're giving calcium and magnesium in a balanced form with other cofactors, it's actually going to help balance these levels in the body and help the body deal with that. So the answer is yes. I mean, when mood issues, copper is really common and plays a big role in anxiety and mood disorders. And so that can build up due to low adrenal function, primarily low thyroid function. The glandular system plays a role. Certainly calcium and magnesium play a role. Liver function, right? If the body is in slow oxidation, that is an indicator that the person is really storing a lot more copper. And there is a really strong connection with copper and hormonal balance in the body, right? Anybody that's dealing with PMS or menstrual issues or menopause, underneath that, you can take things to try and fix that. Like there seems to be a push right now, and this is getting a bit off topic, so I'll just do this quickly, although it's one of the things that we wanted to talk about. Can HTMA support hormonal balance? There seems to be a big push right now, especially for menopause, with taking hormones. And, a lot of the research suggests that yes, although the general hormone levels go down, really women are often still in a state of estrogen dominance, even through menopause, meaning, yes, the estrogen is going down, but progesterone is going down as well. And so, looking at things like zinc, the zinc to copper ratio, copper levels, hidden copper indicators, all of those can help balance the body naturally with regards to hormones. Supporting the liver is really, really important. And,
Yeah.
you
And
know,
there's lots of foods as well
mhm.
that can support the hormones, especially in perimenopause and menopause. And so um, it's not necessarily um, the only solution to go on HRT. I know a lot of people want to, but there are definitely supplements, foods that can really help balance out and get rid of a lot of those symptoms of hot flashes, brain fog, and so on. And certainly this person was getting some of those symptoms, and this person is 55. And so what we did was we just changed the diet slightly and added a few extra supplements, and all the symptoms actually dissipated. So they sort of transitioning really well hormonally. But I wanted to ask you as well, digestive issues. A lot of people come to us with
Mhm.
constipation, heartburn, IBS, all these sort of things. And so how, what on a particular hair chart do you look for to to show to indicate these issues, and what do you suggest to help ameliorate them?
Well, it depends on the person, and I always recommend a full mineral nutritional balancing program, but definitely looking at zinc and phosphorus. Those have to do with HCl production. And so if those are low, then I always know that there's digestive issues. Same with a lower sodium to potassium ratio. That is the overall vitality ratio. That definitely impacts digestion. And then, of course, like the example we're looking at here, when somebody is a very slow oxidizer, constipation is one of the symptoms, right? Not having good bile flow, constipation, the body is just really sluggish and slow, and things are just kind of sitting. So certainly there are supplements like GB3 or NSAID, looking at diet. So I find that, especially with things like IBS and bloating, oftentimes it's diet, like just even eliminating raw foods that can be quite irritating to a sensitive digestive system can really be helpful. Increasing foods that are high in soluble fiber to naturally increase bile flow and bind toxins and actually increase peristalsis in the intestines, right? So getting those bowel movements going naturally. All of those
Mm.
are really important, but there certainly are indicators. And again, when we're talking about mimicry and metals that are being sequestered in the tissues, aluminum can really affect digestion when you have higher levels of aluminum, and it tends to be the metal that I find it's so ubiquitous in our environment that it tends to be on the higher side for a lot of people. Nickel can also cause a lot of digestive issues. So it's a combination. There are definitely things that I would recommend specifically in cases with people struggling with digestive issues, and indicators on the chart that I would look for. But just a reminder that, it's the body working as a whole system, and our digestion and our microbiome and our gut function is paramount, right, to the functioning of our whole body. Even when we were just talking about anxiety and moods and all of that, well, I always ask about digestive issues in those cases because there's such a close link. So
Yeah.
you know
And And here on this chart, we can see the magnesium is not getting utilized, and a lot of people are not eating enough green leafy vegetables, cooked vegetables, providing enough magnesium. Magnesium is obviously going to help push things through the bowel, and so that's something that we do work on with the
Absolutely.
hair test as well.
And
In the
calcium
program.
is just as important. I don't want to forget calcium. So
Right,
calcium helps keep the gut junctions tight, right?
right.
So when we're talking about leaky gut and how prevalent that is, oftentimes there's an imbalance in calcium, and there's been a push in the last however many years where people are really pushing magnesium, not balanced with calcium. And unfortunately, one of the results of that can be leaky gut because the calcium's not there to keep those gut junctions tight. And that's why I always emphasize the body as a whole system. So,
Great. Thank you. And
yeah.
then skin issues. So if somebody's coming to you with skin issues, what sort of things what sort of levels are we looking at on the and indicators on the chart, and how can doing the program help their skin issues?
Well, our skin is one of the largest detox organs. So some people are a little bit more naturally prone to detox to the skin. But there are a lot of different factors to look at. Copper and nickel tend to be the two metals or toxic minerals that affect the skin the most. For, if we're looking at, okay, well, what is the cause on a chart? I will always look at that. Lower adrenal function, lower thyroid function plays a role. So when the thyroid isn't functioning where it should be, or a person is a very slow oxidizer, which again indicates lower thyroid and adrenal function, the skin gets very dry or can get very dry in those cases. And when the skin is dry and itchy and the person's scratching, well, it leaves the skin barrier open to infection and different things happening. So just by even balancing the oxidation rate, it's helpful for resolving skin issues. And there can be histamine issues, which is adrenal related. So all of that, again, we can look at these different factors. A low NAK ratio is sodium to potassium ratio, again, can be reflective of skin issues. The gut function indicators that we just talked about, like low phosphorus, low zinc, can also contribute to our skin health. If our essential fatty acid profile is off, that can make a difference to our skin. If we're not well hydrated, and some people are drinking the wrong type of water, they may be drinking a lot of water and it's just not hydrating to the body. And so they actually have some dehydration, which of course affects our skin. So many different factors. And even
Yeah.
though, I always talk about how it's really important to work with a practitioner that knows how to interpret an HTMA correctly. That is absolutely 100% true. It's the mineral nutritional balancing program where the magic happens, right? It's like this is the roadmap, and then the magic happens actually with the program. So, and again,
Mm.
because we're changing and healing the terrain of the body. So,
Yeah, and a lot of people as well have problems with acne at any stage in life, and we often see that copper being high when people have acne issues, but also just hormonal issues. And then, of course, the liver being congested, not detoxing very well through the liver. So, diet is very, very much key to fixing that, and we concentrate on helping that liver, taking the load off the liver, and balancing hormones. So there's a lot to consider, when it as you were saying, when it comes to skin issues, but we look at all that and get very good results. So
exactly. And copper always plays a role, some kind of role with all skin issues. And, as you were mentioning with acne, oftentimes that's estrogen dominance, right? And so at the root of that is copper. And I realize that doing topical or oral progesterone does help some people. Like I've seen that help some of my clients that have come to me after that, but it rarely solves the whole issue. So I just wanted to mention that when we're talking about estrogen dominance, whether it's with PMS, acne, menstrual issues, menopause, you can put in some progesterone, you can insert some progesterone, and it might help that balance. So it does alleviate some symptoms, but at the root of it is really a copper issue.
Hmm.
And one of the really lovely things is that if a woman is on the program for a few years before entering menopause, not always, there's a lot of different factors, but oftentimes the symptoms going through menopause are then very minimal because a lot of the copper is being dealt with. This person, it's an interesting chart at age 55 because her body's really trying to deal with that right now, which actually could cause an uptick temporarily in some of the menopausal symptoms, right?
Yeah.
But the
Yeah.
body trying to, because this is a retest, the body trying to actually working on correcting that already and dealing with some of that, which is really wonderful. So,
Great.
Cressida, this was awesome. Where can people find you if they want to get in touch with you?
Well, we will try and put a link underneath this video, but hairanalysisuk.com is where you can find me, and info@hairanalysisuk.com is the email.
Perfect. And for me, people can find me on my website, susancachay.com, susancachay.com. For the HTMA Success Practitioner Training Program, you can also look at htmasuccess.com. And let's do this again sometime soon because I feel
Yeah.
like there's so many offshoots we could have gone in, but it was great to be able to connect today.
Yeah. Thank you, Susan. It was
Okay,
wonderful.
thanks.